From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, gang. How is everyone doing? Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. We've got a show for you today. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So thank you for everyone tuning in this morning to be part of the show. Good morning to you, Mr. David, for tuning in. We have a lot to talk about. John De La Cruz says, loves the new graphics. Thank you, John. We are slightly in ever so often. I try to do subtle changes to just kind of keep things rolling up here. Good morning to Jeremiah. Thank you for tuning in this morning, folks. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show. But before we do that, a quick shout out to KnowBe4 and Ativo Networks for their support. If you have not subscribed to our podcast, please make sure to do so right now. Go to your favorite podcast listening platform or go to our YouTube channel at CyberHub Podcast and subscribe there as well. We've let's go into the headlines. So one, we're going to be talking about a few stories that we started to talk about yesterday. There's a little bit more clarification. Good morning to Harshal. I hope I said that correctly, sir. Thank you for tuning in. So we've got the Kaseya denying that the way they got the decryption key is through paying anything. Microsoft rushes a fix non-fix for PetitPotam. Apple patches another active 0-day, folks, and this one is a doozy. And finally, a vulnerability in a survey tool is giving organizations a run for their money from a security perspective. So we'll talk a little bit about supply chain as well. But before we do that, coffee cup cheers, my double espresso. Whatever you're drinking, make it yours. Own it, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening for you. Enjoy your beverage of choice. Cheers. So let's get right into what's going on. Good morning to Chris. Thank you so much for tuning in, Chris. So Kaseya denies paying the Revel who launched a ransomware attack and saying that's how they got their decryption key. So I'm not going to go through the whole, these guys were under a ransomware attack earlier this month, and yesterday they've obtained somehow a universal decryptor from a trusted third party that would allow customers to recover their files without paying. Revel initially asked for $70 million, then later gave them a Black Friday discount of $50. And there's a few reports that Kaseya paid the ransomware, but they say they did not. They said that they didn't negotiate and they didn't pay the ransom, either directly or indirectly through a third party. And as such, all these rumors are just false. Now, what they lack to say here is, how'd you get the decryption key? Now, for the sake of all things normal, right? And let's not go down the conspiracy path or go down an accusation path to which we have zero proof or evidence for. However, there are cases where trusted third parties are able to get decryption keys and post them out there. That does happen. If that did, we'd love to tell the trusted third party, thank you for doing that. Either way, Kaseya is completely and absolutely denying that they paid a cent in ransom to get the decryption key and that they got it from a trusted third party as a gesture of goodwill. Now, it's not to be discounted that someone within the Revel ransomware gang gave a universal decryption key in order to, one, avoid prosecution or have good faith in the event of prosecution. You can only hide for so long before the long arm of the law reaches you. Yesterday, I talked about PetitPotam. Remember that French name? Because it was discovered by a French researcher. Microsoft vulnerability that affects the NTLAN manager, and it forces a remote Windows system to reveal password hashes that could be easily cracked. The kind of stuff that security researchers Gilles Lionel first identified on Thursday, published a POC, and then Microsoft issued an advisory. Now Microsoft comes out, and a lot of people were very unhappy with Microsoft's response to this. So Microsoft came out with an attack scenario as well as mitigation options. Microsoft outlined several mitigation options. For starters, it recommends disabling NTLM authentication on Windows domain controllers. It also suggests enabling the extended protection for authentication EPA feature on the ADCS services. They also talk about the extended protection for authentication. The second part is PetitPotam takes advantage of servers where Active Directory certificate services is not configured with protection for NTLM relay attacks. That mitigation outlined in Kilo Bravo 5005413 instruct customers on how to protect their ADCS. Microsoft also added that companies that are vulnerable to PetitPotam attacks, if NTLM authentication is enabled in their domains and or they're using ADCS with the services and certificate enrollment web services. So a lot from Microsoft there. Good morning to Gary. Coffee cup cheers to the awesome James McQuiggan, and good morning to David. We'll get to our next story. If you own an iOS device, patch it up. Apple released a second major security update, 14.7.1 for iPhones, and we'll get to all the versions on all the OSs here in just a moment. Apple did not share the details of the 0-day or what's being actively exploited in the wild. This could be a few things. One, this could be as a result of what we know from Pegasus. So this could be the patch that Pegasus is taking advantage of from an offensive cyber tool. And now they're patching it up. So the new patch vulnerability, which is CV 2021-30807, was reported anonymously to Apple and is described as a memory corruption flaw that could be exploited to launch code execution attacks with kernel privileges. The flaws were fixed in macOS Big Sur 11.5.1 and iOS and iPad devices 14.7.1. Apple shipped out 14.7 just last week. This is their 13th security update this year. So you're using iOSs, make sure you get those patched. It takes nothing but a few minutes to do so, and it's really, really effective. So please make sure to get that done. Finally, a vulnerability in a survey tool is exploited in a possible Chinese attack on the US. Now, you guys all know that yours truly here is not a big fan of the government of China. Nah, I think they are a direct threat to our national security. They're a direct threat to our economic security. They are problematic, and they need to be dealt with harshly, because that's the only way you get tyrants to back down. Well, now Signia published a report detailing an attack launched by a threat actor that is eerily similar to China. The links to the attack are attributed to the Chinese government. The attacks involves CVE 2021-27852, a deserialization-related code execution vulnerability affecting checkbox survey, an ASP.NET tool designed for adding survey functionality for websites. The checkbox survey vulnerability can be exploited remotely without authentication, and it impacts version 6 of the application. The flaw does not exist in version 7.0, which was released in 2019. If you are by any chance using checkbox survey in any point period in time, please make sure to get that updated. Checkbox says its products is used by hundreds of high-profile customers, including NATO, NASA, the Army, Secret Service, State Department, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Oh, supply chain. Here we go, folks. So the nature of the activity and the general modus operandi suggests TG10121 to be an experienced, stealthy actor, highly aware of OPSEC. The malware used shows a significant effort to avoid detection, both by actively interfering with logging mechanisms, successfully evading commercial EDRs, and by silently awaiting incoming connection. Now, one thing to keep in mind, come September 1st, China has really outlawed security researchers being able to notify organizations about zero-day vulnerabilities from within China. It's causing a lot of practitioners to take a look back and see how do we deal with that going forward. The new law in China essentially gives the Chinese government a leg up rather than the industry as a whole. So keeping that in mind, this product is predominantly used, again, high-profile customers, a lot of government and big corporations. If you have clients in that field, and double check that they're not using checkbox survey, or if you know friends, just forward them the story. All the links are in the show notes. Tom asks, what's a patch? Tom, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you're being sarcastic. But I think the better thing is, why hasn't maybe Microsoft patched PetitPotam? I think that's probably going to be coming in a few weeks on Patch Tuesday. Typically, something's got to be really, really bad for Microsoft to do an out-of-band patch. So keep that in mind. James McQuiggan says patch for everyone, Linux, Windows, and Apple as well. Folks, that's it for our practitioner brief today. We'll be back again tomorrow with more. Also, Clubhouse tomorrow, Tech Town Square, we're going to be renaming ourselves, calling ourselves Digital Debates. Eddie's on vacation, but I'll be on Clubhouse tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Just we'll open the room, have a good time, go for an hour and a half, have a very, very fun discussion. So make sure you go there. Again, be here tomorrow, 9 a.m. for another one of these practitioner briefs. Until then, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for being part of the show. Have a great day and stay cyber safe. Cheers, folks.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.